I've learned one thing: you can't call it a peripheral canal, whatever you do with it. But what you have to do is find some sort of method, conveyance or something, which will allow that so that we can have not only supply, but also quality of water. Next, we have to make sure that we solve the problem with water down in the southern part of the state coming from the Colorado River. The governor has money in there to line those particular conveyances down there, which will move us in that direction. The second thing we need to do is to have land use policy in this Great Valley. I don't want to see the Los Angelesization of the Central Valley, a ribbon of concrete from the ocean to the mountain, from Bakersfield to Sacramento.
30 seconds.
So what we need to do is to get the ag community and the development community together, recognizing neither one can have 100% of what they want. The third thing we need to do is to make sure that we do support the UC Davis program and those extension programs so that we bring best technology to bear on our agricultural products. The other thing we need to do, simple tax policy. My opponent did not want to support the idea that subchapter S corporations be treated under tax policy as partnerships. That affects a lot of family farms. We have to allow those kinds of things to take place, and we also need to make sure that we understand that value-added agricultural products are one of the key factors in expanding trade. I will be involved there. I will show up for my job when it's my obligation to try and bring the California face to other parts of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Lungren. The next question goes to you from the Bakersfield Californian and Vic Pollard.
In rural areas like this, state highways and local roads are deteriorating at an alarming rate because of a lack of money, roads and a lot of other public facilities. If you're elected governor, what would you do to, one, help these areas get a larger share of highway money, and two, return the hundreds of millions of dollars in property tax revenues that were taken to balance the state budget during the recession?
Well, let me say two things. One is on the question of transportation. I happen to think one of the reasons why we ought to eliminate the car tax is that it gives a disconnect message to the people. They think when they pay that huge amount every year, it has something to do with highways. It doesn't have a single thing to do with it. And I think you have to eliminate that. You have to suggest to people we're going to be as honest as we possibly can with them. Secondly, I think then you can go to the people and say, we may need an increase in the gasoline tax for a period of time for particular projects, so that we have an overall increased amount there. The third thing we need to do is to see what we do with bonded indebtedness with respect to our transportation needs. That has been a tough sell in the past. You've got to be honest, and one of the things I want to do is to have a capital outlay budget championed by the governor and the legislature of a multi-year purpose, so that you can fit plans and programs from year to year into a long-term process. The next thing with respect to the return of money to the communities, I think that will flow from what I want to do, which is to have a comprehensive review of the structure of government in California. Normally that's a very difficult thing to do. Governor Wilson had his Constitutional Law Revision Commission. Unfortunately, much of what they presented has been on the shelf, not because he was not interested, but he couldn't get the legislature excited about it. I think when you have a period of time in which we're going to be talking about the new millennium, when you're going to be talking about a new century, when you're going to be talking about us celebrating the sesquicentennial of our state, you might have the atmosphere created in which you can make those judgments. Do we need 5,700 and some odd separate units of government? When you have those questions hanging out there, it is more difficult to go to the precise question of returning money back to the local communities. The big place where you have a difficulty right now is that money, which had been taken by the state, has been returned to the states, or returned to local jurisdictions, but we have not kept up with the needs of particular communities. Part of my reform would allow a realignment of responsibility with authority. Right now you have the authority to raise revenues at one level of government and the responsibility of providing services at another. If you reform that, if you really get in there with tough work and reform that, then you can go to the question of the tax flow. It seems to me that's the best way to deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Lundgren. Your response to that question, Mr. Lieutenant Governor?
First of all, we have about $2.5 billion in the surplus in the highway account by the end of 1998. Plus the federal ICE-T program is going to give us a heck of a lot more money. There are no projects on the books because all we've been doing is seismic retrofitting because of the earthquakes in the early 90s, and properly so. So the first thing I would do is get the California Highway Commission to begin to review the 5-year transportation plan to see what additional roads and highways could be built around this state, whether high-speed rail makes any sense for any part of the valley, other ways we can encourage people to commute without just one person, one car. Now, one reason I think my opponent spent a lot of time talking about things other than highways was he voted against the 5-year authorization bill. It was one of 17 votes. Even Newt Gingrich voted for this. He voted against it, and that laid out federal money for 5 years. So if he had convinced his colleagues to vote the same way, we'd have no money coming from Washington. As it is, we have a whole bunch of money coming, and the job now is how to use it wisely. Now, as for the money that we took from the governor and the legislature took from local government, we have not given it back. We stole $3 billion. We stole it fair and square, and we got to give it back. And I promise to do just that. It'll be over a period of time, but we will give the money back because it wasn't ours in the first place. Just like when I stepped in to stop Governor Wilson from raiding the pension funds in 1992. He couldn't keep his hands off that. Neither could Governor Dumachin. Frankly, even Jerry Brown dipped in there, and we sponsored an initiative, 162, that doesn't let anyone take that money, even governors, without an arm's-length transaction. Just like Proposition 2 will do on this ballot that I support, which keeps anyone from raiding the highway account without an arm's-length transaction. Not just take the money and worry about giving it back later. The last
Thank you.
All right, one quick thing. One thing
Yes,
I
sure.
would do to help local government is to stop biasing all their land use decisions toward the sales tax. Right now, the only thing local government keeps is the sales tax when they have a Kmart or a Walmart. I want to restructure that in a revenue-neutral way so that if they have an Intel fabrication facility, housing, any form of growth, they will benefit from that growth and realize whatever they think is the right kind of growth, they'll get some financial benefit.
We're very equal on time here now. The next question comes from Rich Rodriguez from KFSN in Fresno for you, Lieutenant Governor. Go ahead, Rich.
Lieutenant Governor Davis, in Fresno County, children as young as 8 are being incarcerated. Community-based organizations say it takes cash to keep at-risk kids out of juvenile hall and crime-free. But when the budget pie was sliced last week, the North and the South got the money, the folks in the middle did not. In your opinion, what are Valley groups doing wrong, and what is your vision for prevention?
Well, I'm going to take your premise at face value. I have no idea if, I have no reason to believe you're wrong, but I haven't independently verified that, in fact, the Valley got shortchanged. I do know there is a perception in the Valley that they are shortchanged. Under Gray Davis administration, the Valley will be treated as a full partner on all decisions, whether it's education, the environment, land use, the economy, members of the regents, the Board of Trustees, the State Board of Education. There will be adequate and complete representation of the Valley. This is the fastest growing region of the state. It's the agricultural bounty of the world comes from here. And with the UC campus at Merced, you're going to have some exciting prospects with biotechnology and high technology companies here. This is going to be an even better place to live.
Mr. Davis?
Now, coming to prevention.
We have a time problem. We need closing statements, please, if you could be as quickly as
All right. Obviously, if someone commits a very violent act, they have to be treated harshly. But if this is a truant, or if this is someone with drugs, or if this is someone with a minor offense, I believe in the 8% solution worked in Orange County, where education officials work with law enforcement officials, and for first-time truants dealing with drugs and alcohol, there was counseling, vocational programs. 75% of the crime these kids used to commit was eliminated.
Thank you. With time in mind, your response?
Well, I'll try very, very quickly. First of all, just in talking about how you can be fair to the Valley, and you mentioned education, I checked your record when you were with Jerry Brown. University of California Regents, 13 total, 0 from the Central Valley. Cal State University Board of Trustees, 17 total, 0 from the Valley. Board of Governors Community Colleges, 24 total, 1 from the Valley, 5 years after Jerry Brown took over. State Board of Education, 18 total, 2 from the Valley.
Well, again,
you
I have
can
no
talk,
idea if
but the
those
question
numbers are
is,
accurate.
will you
But
perform?
if they are, I'm going to
But
do a
let me
lot
just
better.
talk about this in terms of prevention. How do you make sure the Valley gets what it deserves? You visit it. You look at the programs. You see if they work.
30 seconds.
A number of months ago, I came down here and looked at several programs. My office has the responsibility for giving out grants for prevention programs and gang activities. Just this week, we made our decision. 10% of the total amount of the state is going to Fresno to 2 programs. One of them, Barrios Unidos, which uses those who've been involved in gangs in the past to try and stop new gang members and to discourage those who are currently in the gangs. That's how you do it. You show up, you learn, you make your judgments. I'm not going to shortchange the Valley. I never have, I never will. I didn't just do it now.